Back in the day, before streaming, before CDs, we listened to music on albums. A vinyl disc spinning 33 and a third revolutions per minute brought us great music one side at a time. 20 or so minutes of music, 4 or 5 songs usually, that created a single listening experience. This format exposed us to other songs of the artist, not just the hits, and often flowed in an order that was created to build and maintain or mold a musical experience for the listener.
Sideshow brings musical experiences from the past to life today. Here, we discuss and review individual sides of record albums we have grown to appreciate and hope you will too. Welcome to The Sideshow.
All right, welcome to another edition of The Sideshow, and we have got an amazing episode today. We are going to be doing something new. We're new on two fronts. First of all, we've brought in a guest, Pete Sandvik, or Accordion to Pete, as we like to call him. We're bringing in Pete because today we're going to do something a little bit different. Instead of just focusing on a single side, we're going to take two sides of the same album and go head to head on which one may be a favorite. Of two people, my brother Mike and Pete have both been longtime listeners and incredible fans of the Grateful Dead. So today we are going to take Workingman's Dead and we are going to take both sides head to head. So this is a new episode, new edition, and new format for us, so please let us know what you think. But I do want to get right into it. Mike, why don't you start us off and tell us a little bit about the band we're going to be talking about today?
All right. Thanks, Mark. Well, the Grateful Dead is a band that most people have heard of and many people have heard. They ended up, over the course of their career, becoming very popular, particularly in the late 1980s and thereafter, until the band ended its career in 1995 with the death of Jerry Garcia. This album that we're going to talk about today, Workingman's Dead, came out in 1970. And so it was a relatively early album in their career. They formed in 1965. And you could talk about the history of the Grateful Dead, even the early history of the Grateful Dead, for literally hours. But I'll hit the high points. The band formed in 1965 in Palo Alto, California. And, you know, the various musicians that were in the band initially had kind of knocked around in similar circles. There were a number of different bands, the Wildwood Boys and Mother McCree's Uptown Jug Champions, that various members were in. But they initially, the original 5 members formed in 1965. Lead guitarist Jerry Garcia, who passed away in 1995, rhythm guitarist Bob Weir, bassist Phil Lesh, drummer Bill Kreutzmann, and vocalist and keyboard player and also harmonica player Ron McKernan, who was known as Pigpen in the band. And originally they were called the Warlocks, but they learned that there was another band that was out recording around that time that was also called the Warlocks, and so they changed their name. Fun fact, the same thing happened to the band that became the Velvet Underground. Their initial name was the Warlocks, and for the same reason, they had to come up with a different name. And so instead of having the Warlocks, we've got both the Velvet Underground and the Grateful Dead. They were initially kind of a blues band, R&B, with some folk music and just regular rock and roll, type influences. And originally Pigpen was probably more of the front man than Jerry Garcia, who, as time went by into the 70s, was sort of the most visible and kind of the figurehead of the band. But initially Pigpen was sort of more of the out front sort of performer. But they played in various joints in the San Francisco Bay Area initially, doing a lot of R&B covers. Starting to get some original material here and there, but a lot of cover material from R&B, blues, folk music, and one of the first things that sort of sent them on the direction that they eventually went down was they got hooked up with Ken Kesey, who was the author of One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, and I believe along with Robert Hunter, who was a lyricist, along with Jerry Garcia in his songwriting, they did some LSD tests at Stanford, and Ken Kesey decided that he was going to kind of take what he'd learned and do some things in La Honda, California, where he had a place. And the Grateful Dead ended up being kind of the house band for a variety of different events that were put on by Kesey and his group of associates known as the Merry Pranksters, where people would take LSD and they just do whatever they did. You can find on YouTube interviews of Jerry Garcia talking about the acid tests. And he talks about the fact that it was one of the things about it was formlessness. You could play, you could not play, you could play whatever you wanted. The different musicians didn't have to be playing in the same key or even the same song. It was formlessness was something that was sort of permitted, and combining that with their normal repertoire ended up sort of kind of creating a thing that eventually turned into, the Grateful Dead as the public came to know them later. By 1965, 1966, they were doing those sort of things. By 1967, things were starting to happen out in California relative to counterculture and whatnot. Bill Graham, the impresario, opened up the Avalon Ballroom or the Fillmore Auditorium, and eventually Winterland and whatnot. A lot of sort of happenings and events. The Monterey Pop Festival took place in 1967. The Grateful Dead performed, and they released their first album in 1967, just called The Grateful Dead. And there were mostly cover songs on it. A very bluesy record, I would say. And there's some original material, but primarily cover songs. And they sounded like a blues band. And when they were performing live around that time, that's the sort of material they were playing. But they would introduce some improvisational, sections in their performances. And some of the improvisation, was informed by the experience that they had, performing at the acid tests. And so about the time their first album came out, that's what the presentation to the public was, kind of a blues band that stretched out a little in a way that was different than bands like Cream, who had kind of been doing the same thing around that same time. As far as it goes, Pete, does that kind of sum up where they were at about that point?
Yeah,
as far as
pretty
you're
much.
concerned?
Pretty much. They went from electric jug music to blues, and then discovered LSD, and that changed everything for that band. And
they kind of were starting to change relatively quickly. Their first album was recorded fairly quickly. I don't recall how many days in the studio it took, but they didn't take a lot of time. And, it didn't make much of a splash in the music industry at that time. But for their second album, which is called Anthem of the Sun, they took a much longer period of time and actually got into debt with their record company as a result of all the studio time that they were taking trying to get down on tape what they were coming up with, which was much different than the sort of blues songs with a strange break or improvisational section, but songs that were structured differently. and were a little longer and just far more psychedelic than anything on their first album. And uh, uh, there were basically four separate songs on their first album, their second album, Anthem of the Sun, all of which were a little longer, all of which were much stranger, all of which were kind of psychedelic. And it's a fairly challenging album to listen to. Some of it was recorded live and then sort of treated in the studio. But it was a much different album, and they'd already evolved over into 1968 into a much more complex unit as far as the material that they were putting out. It was considered a studio album, but there was a lot of live material that formed the basis of the recordings as well. So it was an interesting technique that they used, which in and of itself could take up a full podcast. That was followed in 1969 by an album called Oxo Moxoa, which was a palindromic sort of meaningless word. And that was a studio album, and it had a number of songs that hung around for a long time. St. Stephen, Dupree's Diamond Blues, and some other material. And it was a little more accessible than Anthem of the Sun, but still not your regular cup of tea for the average person. And the cover art is very striking. It's a Rick Griffin painting that is, let's just say, fairly psychedelic. And so by this point, it's 1969. The Grateful Dead performed at Woodstock. By most accounts, it was an awful performance. But they were a part of that whole situation. But the next album they put out was a live album, which was released, I believe, early in 1970, but it was called Live Dead.
Go figure.
Go figure. And it had some recordings of some excellent. It had recordings of some excellent performances, primarily in like in San Francisco during 1969. I don't recall the dates when the recordings were made, but it was around the time that they were actually doing the studio recordings for the Oxo Moxoa album when the live shows were occurring. And Live Dead was really the best music they had put out up to that point, in my opinion. And they're a band that, as time went by, the live performance, the concert was their real. That was what they did. That's how they created their music, primarily in concert format rather than studio recordings. But as 1969 was coming to an end, you had the Woodstock, and then in December of 1969 there was the Altamont concert in the San Francisco area that kind of put a sour note on some of that kind of stuff. And come 1970, the turn of the decade, it's almost like the Grateful Dead were sort of craving the normal. And they ended up going into the studio to record Workingman's Dead, which turned out to be a very different album from anything that they had recorded on record at this point. So Pete, I mean, so that kind of sets the stage for Workingman's Dead. I mean, how would you characterize the situation with the band when they went into the studio about that point?
Well, as you had mentioned, they were having fun in the studio and burning too much money. And so for this album, they had the idea that they'd make a plan and they'd pre-arrange the songs before they went in, because they were kind of they're naturally curious band and knob twiddlers. They like to spend a lot of time experimenting with stuff, which is great. But when it's on your own dime, it can cost a lot of money, especially back then. Studio time was very expensive. So yeah, they were, out of pragmatism, I think Garcia said, we need to just make songs we can remember how to play and that are concise. And let's just get back, let's get back to the old 3.5 minute song format,
and maybe we can practice, right? Ahead of time. And yeah.
So they actually did do demos and, and basically worked out the arrangements before they showed up. And like Garcia, like I just said, the songs became simpler for that pragmatic reason. They wanted to get through this recording with, not spending a lot of money. And in fact, I think it was under 3 weeks from when they showed up to when they were done. They were buttoning it up. So, and it really represents a pivotal point, as we'll discuss, from this 7-headed psychedelic monster that they had created to something much more organic, or at least at least acknowledging their roots originally. And there's a bunch of different things going on: the blues, the Bakersfield country stuff, which I'll touch on later. But they basically came out with their first kind of folk album. It's psychedelic folk, and it's not exactly folk, and it's pretty eclectic, but it definitely is. There's a bunch of storytelling going on.
Yeah,
that's much more traditional.
Well, and it's kind of common for people to point to Crosby, Stills and Nash, and Young as something that they kind of looked at as maybe because that was hippie music, and the sort of music that sort of got at the Woodstock vibe, I agree with Pete's sort of characterization of how they were going to take a different approach to their songwriting and doing actual songwriting, and also now the Grateful Dead was never going to be able to sing, in my opinion, like Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young in terms of their harmonies and whatnot, but they gave it a shot, and it was actually fairly well done in their own sort of scruffy way. And so they were able to achieve that, as far as I'm concerned. I happen to have a copy of the vinyl here. The front cover is pretty simple. It's got a picture of the band standing on a street somewhere in the San Francisco area. On the back, it's got a picture of the 6 band members. An additional percussion player, Mickey Hart, had joined the band following their original incarnation, and he was still performing. A keyboard player had come through the lineup in the late 60s named Con Stanton. He wasn't around anymore come Workingman's Dead. And there are 4 songs on each side. None of them particularly long or particularly short. They're all in the kind of 3 to 5 minute realm, basically. And that is Workingman's Dead. Anything to add to that, Pete, about the record in general before we start in on the side specifically?
Well, yeah, the packaging that you just held up is significant because it does the sepia tone, the whole, like, they're kind of in a dusty street, the scene of it sets the mood. And you look at the album covers before, they were kind of renowned for having wild album covers that also reflected what you were going to get inside. But when people looked at this thing, they're like, well, this is different.
I completely agree, Pete. And you get going from that just highly psychedelic look to Workingman's Dead, and it's not just the tone of the picture, the font, the etchings of the band on the back cover. I mean, this screams like, true, like Workingman's Appalachia. As someone who wasn't deep into the Dead, and with a song that, like, okay, what's a song that I know on this side? Well, Cumberland Blues, I know that. That's what my mind immediately goes to when I look at that picture. And it's, as you listen to the songs, and I have to kind of give a warning for people that aren't huge Dead fans, and both Pete and Mike would fall into the category of very big Dead fans. I came to the party late, And there is, in some cases, if you don't have an approach to listening to the music, a lack of accessibility on some dead tunes. But if you try to put some context around what you're listening to, it's I think they nailed going back to a different type, to whether it be their roots or a different type of song and approach to that type of jug band music, that type of folk or blues, real basic form that really comes out through this album. And as you take each song, I mean, that's certainly how I did, and it got me past what on a first listening seemed like some what's going on here to this makes some sense here. So I'll let you guys talk a little bit about the music.
Okay. Well, and the majority of Grateful Dead music that I listen to these days is live recordings. And yes. The Grateful Dead band has made the Grateful Dead organization has made a lot of their concerts available in live format over the years. And so it's relatively rarely that I put on a studio recording by the Grateful Dead, but beyond question, the studio recording that I listen to the most is this album.
Mm-hmm. And Mark, you had you just said something that really resonates, is that no matter what you think of the Grateful Dead, you listen to this record and it's a good entree into this band for somebody that's probably not gonna like the weird live stuff or whatever, not gonna like the improv, and maybe this is a good time to launch into side one.
All right,
yeah. Let's take us through side one, Pete.
Which, as we all know, is the superior side of this album. I love every song on this album, but I'm here to argue that side one is a better listening experience. The first song is a song that, the second I heard it, I've never forgotten hearing it the first time. It's called Uncle John's Band, and it's basically a welcoming, the tone of it. There's just a nice strumming guitar and key of G. There's some kind of calypso-like percussion that comes in. It's very warm sounding. It's very simple. The simplicity is really what is in the cornerstone of this record. They're not laying on extra tracks. They're almost recording live in studio, which just means that there's not a lot of overdubbing. Probably vocals, but you kind of have to do that. And I would say this is one of the classic Dead tunes of all time. If I had to list a top 10, which is hard to do with the Dead, I would put this in that top 10 of, this is not a greatest hit. It's just something that resonates throughout the entire Dead catalog. And a lot of the reason of it is that it's inviting people in. And a lot of the Dead's appeal was that they were of their crowd. They weren't apart from their crowd. Like, Mike and I have been fans forever, and from the get-go, from the time I saw the Grateful Dead movie in the theater in like 1977 or whatever, I was 15 years old. I was like, these guys they get what's going on. I want to be part of this. But back to the music, to the song, it's got very straight ahead lyrics by Robert Hunter. The first days are the hardest days. Don't you worry anymore. These are pretty broad aphorisms. You can pretty much attribute them to different things in your life as you go through. Chief among them is this next lyric, because when life looks like easy street, there is danger at your door. That has applied to my life 100 times. It's like, don't get too sassy. Don't really want to dwell too much on the lyrics as we have to move through this album. But I think it was their first. This is the first glimpse that anyone got of this new, more earthy, folky Grateful Dead, and it's just got a great sound. If you want to chill out, it's like opening a window in the spring. It's like you letting the first warm air come in through your house. It's perfect for that. So and to me, Uncle John's Band, it was, I mean, you could argue that they were trying to kind of come up with an anthem that was like a Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young anthem, like something off of the first side of Deja Vu by that band. I mean, and I think that they kind of achieve that because these are the best harmony vocals that the Grateful Dead ever did.
in my opinion. And it really is. I don't disagree with Pete that as a single song, this is one of their classic Grateful Dead, and one of their signature songs. Um, it really is a good. I mean, it's accessible. You're not going to find many people, if they like music at all from the rock era, that will thumb their nose at this song. It's accessible and kind of achieved a lightheartedness, but with some serious things in the lyrics. I think that Pete's referring to them as aphorisms, I think, is a good way of doing it. Just wisdom that doesn't get in your face.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you hear a lot. I listened to this entire album as about being poor. I don't know what Robert Hunter was thinking. I would guess he was on acid a lot when he was writing some of these lyrics, so who knows what he was thinking. I listened to this whole album. Every single song on this album I relate to someone who's poor. You hear, life is hard. Don't expect things to be easy. In fact, if things are easy, there's probably some problems that are on the way. But when you think about the poorest communities, even going back in history, what they have as a positive moment in their life is Saturday night they can go down and listen to a live band at the local pub. It's not some big concert, but it's the one break of happiness in their entire week. And you hear that in this song. There's a pleasantness to this song while being serious. Again, there's some serious lyrics and some almost like some guidance being given to someone in it. But I also see it as a very a notable song when you talk about the Grateful Dead, and one of the songs that pops to my mind. But it fits well into what I see we'll be hearing for the rest of the album is about what it's like to be poor.
Yeah. There's a lot of austerity, or whatever you call it.
Yes.
It's heartbreak of every flavor, really.
Yes.
And dust on the boots. This is an album made by working people. This is their nod to the blue collar and to the downtrodden. Yep. But it's always got a hopeful ending. Speaking of endings, the one weird part of this song is it suddenly switches into the key of D minor and switches to a 7/8 tempo or time signature, which isn't weird for the Grateful Dead, but it's weird for a folky, straight ahead strumming song. And at live, of course, that would take on a whole different dimension. That last little da 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 ba ba da ba bump, that would go on for a while and get weird.
Yeah. And I agree that, because you almost forget about that part of the song when you listen to the studio version, although it's clearly there. But in live performance, that was where the band stretched. That was where they put in the extended, more psychedelic, more improvisational type of playing at just that point you identified, Pete.
Right. So a great song, a classic song, and we can move on, I guess, then to
just
unless you have something else to say, right?
To close out on Uncle John's Band, one of the verses kind of sums up the situation with the Grateful Dead. Come hear Uncle John's Band by the riverside. Got some things to talk about here beside the rising tide. Mm-hmm. That one could argue, one could put those four lines up on a picture to sort of sum up what the Grateful Dead is all about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. This definitely was definitely a pivotal moment for them. And as we move on to the next song, we have what I consider to be the first good example of a Hunter Garcia ballad. Mm-hmm. They would become famous for this. Some of their most beloved songs like Ripple, Broke Down Palace come to mind. Wharf Rat probably falls into that category too. But this is a heartbreak ballad, pretty traditional. It's kind of a slower beat, slower tempo, and it's very much, it highlights to me how Garcia the singer becomes the song, and he's got such this fragile power in his voice. His voice is kind of brittle at times. It's like somebody once described it as a creaking floorboard. And at least I don't want to keep referring to live performances, but it's hard to not refer to them, having seen them so much. It's almost like he's singing his own song when he's much like Sinatra, quite frankly. Strangely enough, he was a great narrator of Hunter lyrics, and like I said, I could delve into the lyrics. I just thought this has a lot of great moments where you just kind of contemplate life and the downside of love. Here, this is certainly a character who's brokenhearted. And it's like I said, it's fairly straight. There's not a whole lot of metaphor in this. Hunter used to work heavy in psychedelic metaphor, and you couldn't really. This is more literal than he's been, I think, up to this point. As far as
this is probably this is what some of the closest that the Dead has gotten to sort of almost straight country music. The wheels are muddy, got a ton of hay. There are the having the high time, living the good life was out in the country.
Yeah.
Not living not living in the city. It is a little more straightforward in that respect than a lot of Robert Hunter's lyrics. But this song was performed live at Woodstock, by the way.
Oh, interesting.
They performed this song at Woodstock.
Also you hear a lot of the life is hard in here. I mean, not only the wheels are muddy, but the wheels broke down and the leader won't draw. He can't even get his horse to pull this stuff in like a farm situation. You hear hardness in here. I mean, the lyrics are almost dragging. It absolutely is a ballad format, but there is again this focus on we're in the midst of a hard life, and even in that situation, wanting to have love and happiness with a good life is something that they're pursuing.
Yeah, I mean, along those lines, it's cautionary, but there's a hopeful thread. But like the lyric, "Nothing's for certain; it could always go wrong. Come in when it's raining, going out when it's gone. We could have us a high time." Well, like Mark was saying, we're here almost Springsteenian. This. I mean, it's hopefulness in the you've got to like soldier on. This is gonna suck, but we'll get through this. We could have us a high time, living the good life. Well, I know. It's like it's an article of faith, which it truly is. When you're going through a bad time, you have to believe in things that don't yet exist.
Yep.
The one drawback to this song, I would say, is it is a little bit of a dirge.
Yeah.
So it drags a little. Might be. When Mark said drags, I thought that was a good one. And it's just sitting and listening to it. I mean, it's a beautiful song. Even though it's kind of scruffy around the edges, it has a rural scruffiness to it. But it is a beautiful song, but it's a little slow.
Well,
drags a little.
I would describe it a little differently. I can remember, I think the first time I'd heard this, and I had never heard this performed live or whatever again. This is from the outside looking in. I pictured this more of, remember the cassette recorders from, back in the 70s, and when the batteries would start to run out, it wouldn't stop. It would go like slower. And I could picture if you put on Barry Manilow's greatest hits and with bad batteries, it might sound like my first impression of this song.
Right.
Again, though, because it's not trying to be upbeat, and that's the thing. And I think this is the case with a lot of Dead songs. If you listen to it, as opposed to just, is this something I can tap my feet to and or whatever, you've got to think a little bit about this. And again, in the context of trying to, what this sounds like what poor sounds like. If they have taken the whole notion of poverty and a difficult working life, and this is what it sounds like. And quite frankly, I think they nailed it. So anyway, I use again different terminology than maybe dirge. That doesn't mean that there isn't some meaning behind the song that it makes it a good song.
Yeah, Bob Weir used to refer to it as a crying song. You know,
There you
we'd
go.
always say, here's the next song, whatever they do. I believe that's an older term than Mr.
Yeah.
Weir. But yeah,
But
it's a sad tune.
yeah.
But every song on this album has a different mood.
Yep.
And the next one, if you guys don't have anything more to say
Mm-hmm.
about High
Let's
Time,
do it.
all right? It's an up-tempo, happy murder ballad called Dire Wolf. It's the happiest murder ballad you'll ever hear.
Yeah.
It's very folkloric. I love this song. I've always said throughout the 40 some years I've been listening to the Dead, this one keeps coming up as like, this is a song people kind of pass by as far as like, this is a great song. But it's every time I've heard it live, every time I hear it on this record, it just jumps right out. And what really jumps out about it is the newly acquired skill Jerry Garcia had on the pedal steel guitar.
Mm-hmm.
And the pedal steel is one of the most difficult instruments to learn. Garcia woodshedded for a few months. And, he was not up there with the Nashville Cats as far as skill goes. But like everything Garcia had, it had a lot of heart, a lot of Jerry in it. And
Yeah.
it's kind of amazing. He was using this thing live with them. He was using it. But on this particular song, which kind of definitely reflects their early country radio they were listening to in like 59, 60 when they were teenagers. It's definitely of a traditional idiom, like very much
Mm-hmm.
not standard country song, but right up there,
Mm-hmm.
Because of the pedal steel guitar that's pretty much throughout the entire song, it really has a country feel to it, and it is up tempo. And the when he does the break where he does the pedal steel solo, very much like the pedal steel guitar that Jerry Garcia played, because on the Deja Vu album with Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, people would recognize the pedal steel guitar in the song "Teach Your Children"
Mm-hmm.
off of that album, and that was Jerry Garcia playing. And this has a similar sound to it in the break on this song.
And the repetitive lyrics about him basically, asking not to be murdered, makes it so that even if you've never heard the song before, you find yourself kind of singing along as it gets into the song, because they're returning to kind of the same lyrical format, which makes it a really just an easy song to listen to.
Yeah, very sing-alongable. I agree with that.
Yes, yeah.
It's you want to like. I've witnessed this playing this song for somebody for the first time, and you see them kind of going. By the second time the chorus comes around, they're singing along with it.
Yeah.
And I always thought it was kind of funny. Like,
Mm-hmm.
please don't murder me. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
obviously,
Yeah. It's kind of like a Jack London Cabin Fever type
Mm-hmm.
song.
yeah.
And where you just look, let me make it through this, because there's a lot of forces coming at you that, like Jack London wrote about, when someone who doesn't know what they're doing ends up in the frozen north. The elements, the animals, and their own frailties are ganging up on them, and this song kind of reflects that sort of thing. You're locked up alone in a cabin when it's too cold to go outside, and your mind starts to play tricks on you.
Mm-hmm.
And also the dire wolf can be used as a metaphor for a lot of things, and it has
Oh,
been.
yeah.
This is a literary device, whatever. But it's like he comes knocking at the door and he's collecting his dues, and the wolf at the door is a commonly used phrase for economic stress. Once again, Mark, it's a poverty reference.
Yes. Yeah.
Most of us, when that wolf appears, it's a bill in the mail.
Yep.
That's
yes.
that's the form the wolf takes in modern life. So
Running to and fro, hard working at the mill, never fails in the mail. Here comes a rotten bill.
so great song. I've always loved it. It's this album just has a ton of them. This is a really good record. So
It's lyrically much more complex than the preceding song, and well worth the listen. Well worth the listen.
Yeah, and if you guys want to pull any lyrics and just whatever, I'm trying to avoid like reading lyrics, but
this song I don't think really is conducive to that.
Right.
Frankly.
Okay.
It's worth it.
So fourth song, last song on the best side, according to Pete, is a song called "New Speedway Boogie," and it's a song about the reaction to the events at Altamont. But it has enough abstraction that it could be about other things as well. Sure. But basically, Hunter we had already covered the basics of Altamont. You did, Mike. And anyone that's interested, there's a great book by Joel Sullivan called Altamont. And there's a movie about it. Basically, a guy named Meredith Hunter ended up getting beaten and stabbed to death by the Angels. The Angels were there at the behest, not at the behest of, but because the Dead had used them as in similar scenarios. It's not worth getting bogged down in the details, other than to go in to set that up and talk about how this is Hunter. There's a lot of fingers being pointed at the Dead. There's a lot of fingers being pointed at the Stones and at Mick Jagger. And there was an article in a San Francisco newspaper basically saying this is the death knell of the Woodstock generation. Basically, it's all about power and greed. And if people get hurt, so be it, because this is now rock and roll has become a money grab.
Yeah,
and I'm forgetting who the author of that was, famous rock critic. But
I mean, and just for people that don't know, I mean, the Altamont concert in December of 1969 was initially conceived by the Rolling Stones, who did not perform at Woodstock, and this was going to be sort of like another Woodstock out on the West Coast, and it turned out being poorly planned. And it was a bummer. I mean, it was just some of the music that was performed was probably pretty good, but the whole concert experience, sort of the pinnacle of which was this death that Pete referred to, and it really was sort of like the dark side of the Woodstock generation, and for that reason, like Pete said, kind of struck the death knell of that. The dream is over,
right,
kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. They had to switch locations a few times, and you're going to put on Woodstock, you need 3 weeks to a month to build stages. And I believe they switched to the Altamont Speedway the day before. And so they were still setting stuff up, and they didn't have, where that comes into play is they didn't have the time to set up any kind of perimeter around the stage. The stage itself was only 3 feet off the ground. I mean, it was nothing. People could just like reach out and touch Mick Jagger if they want. So there's no security was a challenge. And the fact that the Angels sent their young recruits, and their young recruits proceeded to get kind of out of hand on all kinds of chemicals, it was a bad combo. It was a bad. It led to bad things. This song isn't so much about the events of like I said, the events of New Speedway, although it does refer to them. It's more about just the reaction about, please don't dominate the first lyric is please don't dominate the rap jack if you got nothing new to say. Now this is probably directed at the journalist who is pointing fingers at everybody and saying this is now a load of crap. And he spends a little time on the mountain, a little time on the hill. Some say better run away, some say better stand still. There's a lot of people that say this thing got delayed because they were filming it, and that it took too much time to wait for the Stones to come out. People got out of hand. But anyway, the music itself, it's a really nice groove. It's a blues song, and it's got just a down and dirty kind of Stratocaster, kind of cleaner electric guitar sound. And it propels itself as kind of a mid-tempo blues. It's something. This is a toe tapper. This is something you can actually get up and boogie to.
And it has a sound that's unlike any other Grateful Dead song, just in feel and sound. But you can also tell it's the Grateful Dead.
Yeah.
By kind of that loping, and Jerry's vocals. So it distinguishes itself from a lot of other Dead songs, but it is clearly a Grateful Dead song.
Yeah, and Jerry's vocals they are very catchy here. They've almost got like a jerk to them. I mean, he'll be singing. It's like, don't. He pops this emotion into the lyrics, which is very notable as well. On top of that kind of foot tapping, still bluesy type of sound, but absolutely has got some get up and go to it.
Right, and it's another feel. Like an album, like I said, it touches upon all these traditional music forms. This is one of the blues songs on this record, and they're kind of straight ahead making a blues song. They really hadn't done that before. I mean, there's some Pigpen stuff earlier on, but this is them writing an original blues song, and it's got a great groove to it. And it's a fitting into what may be the better side of this record. I don't know. The people shall decide.
Well, and one example of the lyrics in this song, that now I don't know, but I've been told it's hard to run with the weight of gold. Other hand, I heard it said it's just as hard with the weight of lead. And so I mean the lyrics here put sort of opposites against each other, and the primary opposite is darkness and light. Because
and that reference, I think, points to Mick Jagger publicizing this free concert, which he shouldn't have ought to done, because it's the Stones. You're going to get too many people. And the other one, the weight of lead, as opposed to, so there's the greed, and the weight of lead is, I'm just taking to mean the, violence and the gun. I was going to say Meredith Hunter did get shot, but there were other acts of violence going on at this show too. Other people died.
It was an idea that went horribly wrong.
Yeah,
and to the point where we're taking a look at the underlying idea and thinking, was this a good idea to start with, is appropriate. At the end of the song, one way or another, this darkness got to give. Sort of like, we had a light period back in August in New York. Now we had a dark period in December in San Francisco, but the darkness is going to give and light will come again, and then darkness will come again, and blah blah blah. I mean, it's a good song. I mean, it's a great song.
And once again, right. You have the negative, you have the positive. You have it's a drag, but there's gotta find a ray of hope in something that's awful, basically.
Well, I agree that is a good ending to a good side. But side two is clearly the superior side of this album, in my humble opinion.
How dare you?
And New Speedway Boogie, which we just talked about, concluded side one, and side two starts out with one of my favorite Grateful Dead songs, Cumberland Blues, which is, I think, in structure a blues song, but it's got a very, very acoustic country, maybe more bluegrass feel to it. It's up tempo. It's not a hangdog blues song. It's more of a kind of lamenting one's troubles with a smile on their face, and it definitely fits into the poor category that we've talked about. The Cumberland Blues comes from not only the Cumberland region of the United States in the Appalachian Mountains, but also the name of a mine, the Cumberland Mine, and the song is about miners, and you look back at the picture on the album cover where you show the guys standing on the street there. You can see some smokestacks there. I mean, and that picture was taken somewhere in San Francisco area or in San Rafael, California,
I think.
But you look at that picture, and that could be some coal mining town in West Virginia.
Yeah.
And which is sort of what this song is about. And the first verse is a guy that's waking up in the morning after being with a woman, and he has to get to work, and it's, I can't stay here much longer, Melinda. And personally, that lyric is always going to stick with me, because when Mark and I graduated from high school, they had us lined up, and the powers that be were saying, "Now look, you got to be in order. You got to be in the right place, and when we start walking in, you have to be where you need to be, or it's going to screw everything up in terms of them reading off your names as you go up on stage." And there was one of our classmates whose first name was Melinda, and we started to move. And Mark, I don't know if you were right there next to me, because you might have been playing in the band that was performing.
I was there when we were walking. Right?
Okay, well, but in any case, we started moving, and Melinda had like run to the bathroom or something. She'd say about like, "I'll be right back," but she didn't make it back in time. And so when it came time to move, I sort of said out loud, "I can't stay much longer, Melinda." And she ended up...
Wasn't her name Belinda? Wasn't it Belinda?
No, her last name started... Belinda? It was Melinda. Her last name started with a B.
Yeah,
she was right next to us, and right behind us alphabetically. Yes. But in any case, I was singing it walking into our high school graduation.
Yep.
But he goes on with talking about a lot of poor men make a $5 bill, will keep him happy all the time. Some other fellas making nothing at all, and you can hear him cry, "Can I go, buddy? Can I go down and take your shift at the mine?" I mean, it's that kind of song, and there's a lot going on. I think there's electric guitar, although it's not a loud, screechy electric guitar. There's acoustic guitar. There's banjo being played eventually as the song goes on, and it is definitely a toe tapper, and kind of the nothing left to do but smile, smile, smile kind of sentiment to the song. And it's upbeat. It's kind of positive. It's very straightforward blues song about guys that have to make their money going down into the coal mine. And a lot of poor man got the Cumberland Blues. Mm-hmm. He can't win for losing. A lot of poor man got to walk the line just to pay his union dues. So it's a very straightforward, very positive. I think amidst all this, kind of poor man's blues sort of thing, it's hard not to smile listening to this song, I guess is what I'm trying to say. I mean,
yeah,
Pete,
it's definitely the toil, which went, again, my whole focusing on how the poor are seeing life. I mean, the toil that is necessary, and then the squeeze. It's not just having to answer to the man, you got to answer to your union as well. And it's hard for a poor guy to get ahead, even one who's got a job, right? That is working. And it is this, you can hear that in the song, yet it's a great song, and probably one that even people that aren't really familiar with the Dead may have heard before or have heard of before.
This is one. The sound of it is definitely. You go back to Merle Haggard, and he's got a song called "Workingman's Blues," and if you dial that one up, Google that stuff, because that guitar sound and the tempo, it's pretty close. And the Dead were going out and seeing like Buck Owens, this whole Bakersfield thing with that guitar sound. That's who they were seeing when they were 18 years old. They were heavily influenced by what was on the AM radio around the San Francisco area. And that's now in this record coming out, in its full thrush, as it were. And yeah, every time I play, I'm a musician, and every time I sit in with a band I'm not familiar with that plays Dead's music, I always request this song because I know people are going to get up and it's fun. It's a fun song, you know.
Well, and I ended up seeing the Grateful Dead live 29 times in about a 10-year period. And on those handful of times where they performed this song, I always loved it.
Yeah.
And when listening to Grateful Dead live recordings, from the 70s, which is generally 1972 through 77 is generally the kind of the years that I listen to the most. Whenever they play it, it's always a treat to hear. And speaking of live performances, the next song, the second song on side 2, is called Black Peter, and it is one of the great Grateful Dead ballads, in my opinion. And the first time that Pete and I saw the Grateful Dead together was on December 3rd of 1981 in Madison, Wisconsin. And there was an archivist who was sort of a member of the Grateful Dead organization. His name was Dick Latvala. And he sort of was the curator of the vault of Grateful Dead recordings, because they recorded their own concerts. Not every single one, but a lot of them. And he was sort of the head honcho. He has since passed away, but while he was around, he was the person who was in charge of the Grateful Dead vault of recordings. And he declared that his favorite live version of Black Peter was performed at the December 3rd, 1981 concert in Madison that Pete and I attended. Black Peter it's a ballad, and it's kind of slow, but it's got a very simple kind of guitar pattern to it, and it's really kind of engaging. It's about a guy who's basically on his deathbed, dying, and it doesn't need to really be elaborated on lyrically, but it's one of those songs that doesn't sound like any other Grateful Dead song, but when you listen to it, it's a Grateful Dead song. And the bridge of the song is one of the most beautiful moments that the Grateful Dead ever accomplished on record for their studio recordings, in my opinion. See here how everything lead up to this day, and it's just like any other day that's ever been. Sun going up and then the sun is going down. Shine through my window, and my friends, they come around. And then then they say, come around. It's just it's beautiful, and it's because the guy is dying, and his friends are coming to be with him.
That's the scenario.
It's just a beautiful moment. And
they worked up almost a gospel vocal 3-part for that part, especially in the Midland years, especially early Brent. It was just the soaring emotive moment. I agree. It was beautiful and just heartbreakingly beautiful. It's so full of sorrow. Anyhow.
And so it's just a very it's this song is just stuck with me. I mean, I could the sound of the guitar, and the band is in there. I mean, there's drums and bass, but it's restrained. It's consistent with the fact that this is a more restrained album. They're not looking for wild, loud psychedelia, and this song fits perfectly into that format. And along with Cumberland Blues, it is just one of those Grateful Dead songs that is unique within the Grateful Dead oeuvre, but also a signature Grateful Dead song at the same time. I cannot recommend many Grateful Dead songs more so than Black Peter. Um, uh, uh, Mark, what
Hey,
was your take on Black Peter?
again, first impression listening to the song, I got a little bit of the 70s tape recorder effect with this. However, I agree with you. If listening to, you have to listen to the words to me to appreciate this song. And it's not just about a man dying. And when you talk about his friends are going to be there, there's also this notion that there's only going to be one or two friends that are there. And I think that a lot of us, if we sit and try to picture our death and our funeral, and only having one or two people standing there, right? That's a very profoundly sad thought for many people. But again, if back to that notion of poverty and the poor and people that live their lives in a very small universe, because that's what their resources provide them. That's not that uncommon. So again, put in the context of this, it fits very well, and it is. It's I think it's a very sad song.
But a great song.
Yeah,
Well.
it's one of my favorites by the Grateful Dead. Okay, moving along. The third song on side two is called "Easy Wind," and it's a fairly straightforward blues song, and it was written entirely by Robert Hunter, and sung by Pigpen. And one of the reasons why I think this is a very important song, just generally with the Grateful Dead and also on this album, is this is really the one time where they captured in the studio a Pigpen live showstopper. There are a number of different songs where Pigpen would get out and would sing, and he'd kind of go into a little rap, and the band would be playing, and Pigpen had a way of kind of pulling these really funky guitar jams out of the rest of the band. And this song is really the only time and when I talk about songs like this one, like Hard to Handle, like Good Lovin', Pigpen would do his thing and the band would rise to the occasion and really sound like a down and dirty bluesy funky band. And this song is basically it's a guy who runs a jackhammer on highway construction, and he's singing the blues. Doesn't want to take any sass from his woman when he gets back home after working all day, and blah blah blah. And the highlight of the song is the jam the instrumental break in the middle. Starts out with a Pigpen harmonica, and then goes into Bob Weir playing some lead guitar, and then kind of rounds out with Jerry Garcia, doing a lead, and then comes back into the lyrics. And with both percussionists really going to town. And there is a DVD audio version of this album available. It's not real cheap. It's expensive, but it's available. And it has a 5.1 surround sound mix. And if you've got the equipment, which I know Pete has and I have to play that, and you crank this up, it is rocking. Unlike any of the other songs on this album, this is a loud, rockin', funky. And
I agree with the highlight. Definitely, decidedly is that break, and Garcia's just got this great muscular guitar sound, and Lesh is the separation is really good. You can hear both drummers. They're doing a tom-tom thing that's complementary with each other. They're staying out of each other's way, but it's aggressive. And Phil Lesh is just at his bounciest early 70s best. He's all over the place, but he's not being self-indulgent. He's following. He's interplaying with Jerry, and I agree. That is the highlight. one of the highlights of this record, and certainly the highlight of that song.
One on the 5.1 mix, I mean, during Jerry's, not long after Jerry starts his solo, I mean, there's a cymbal where, sitting in the sweet spot in my family room, when that comes on, I mean, I want to look over my left shoulder and look for a guy there banging a cymbal. I mean, it's just it's a good recording, and anyone who's interested in that kind of thing, well worth checking out. But this song is, on the one hand, not really at home with a lot of the rest of the material, because it does focus on that sort of loud electric guitar Grateful Dead, but it also, in my opinion, kind of enhances the album as a whole, and particularly this side, for that reason. It really did. It's important that there be some clean studio rendition of a good down and dirty Pigpen song, and this one is it.
And although the tone of the song may be different, again, in my listening to this album, you're talking about a working class guy, right? He's got to go to work. He's trying to find a woman who won't hide his liquor, right? I mean, this again is very working class, very, regardless of, and I agree with you, the tone of the song is different than a lot of the other aspects of the album, but it still fits right in. And when you think about a guy who's got to go to work and operate a jackhammer all day, and he wants to go and drink some booze and probably listen to a music that's a little bit more upbeat and jamming, right, at the end of the day. So to me, it fits right in what we've been listening to, now going on to the second side here.
Yeah, thematically, and certainly the line, I'll live 5 years if I take my time balling that jack and drinking my wine.
Yeah,
well, Pigpen would only himself live another 3 years. Not to bring the tone down, but
yeah.
Well, at one of the 27 club.
Yeah, right.
He died when he was 27. So Easy Wind is a great one. Now, and the fourth and final song on side 2 is a song that most people are going to have heard, and a lot of people connect with the Grateful Dead. Casey Jones. And most people are aware of the driving that train high on cocaine. Casey Jones, you better watch your speed. And the reference to cocaine, it's kind of like the squeal like a pig scene in the movie Deliverance. It sort of gives the movie a bad name and sort of detracts from all of the other excellent qualities of that film. And because this song is not a song that is promoting the use of cocaine. I mean, the lyrics are not suggesting that, try this stuff, you'll like it, and it'll be a good time. The song is sort of a cautionary tale. Casey Jones, you'd better watch your speed. Trouble ahead, trouble behind, and that notion just crossed my mind. So it's sort of like, take care, and don't let this, don't let your mind get out in, over your skis, so to speak. And musically, and I think this is important for this song, and I think it's important for this side. This song sounds like the Grateful Dead. There are a number of songs that the Grateful Dead came up with during the 70s, at least the early 70s, that sort of, this is what the Grateful Dead sounds like. This is a song that, maybe a band like Little Feat could have come up with a song like this, but just the music and the sort of, that Phil Lesh bouncy, kind of country funky, it has that music to it as well. And it was a song that was played on the radio. I mean, people heard it. One of the times the Dead played on Saturday Night Live, they performed this song. And so it's one of those, even though it's not a song that's as serious or as lyrical or as profound as like Uncle John's Band, it's a song that's very characteristically the Grateful Dead.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then
Well, and I'd agree with you. It certainly is a cautionary tale. Fits, as I've been talking about, right into the mode. A lot of people in poverty or down situations, use drugs. It doesn't change the fact that there's trouble ahead, there's trouble behind, there's these dangerous things coming at you that maybe you'd be in a better position to respond to if you weren't that state. And I think the vocals on the verses are just great. The way that he said they jumped the track and is heading for you.
yeah,
It's got kind of a happiness to it, but there's a yep, kind of
The the
Murphy's Law. It's coming right at you,
the
kind
song
of feel to it.
the song has a sardonic twinkle in its eye.
exactly.
Sardonic, exactly.
Well, Hunter could be quite funny, and for me, this is like I find humor in Direwolf. I find a lot of humor in this one. This is like almost like a cartoon. And as far as the music goes, yeah, it's this mid tempo funk country that is very unique. Bill Kreutzmann is kind of an unsung hero in the Grateful Dead, but he came up with a lot of this kind of. He was Bill the drummer, and he had a sensibility about him that was quite unique.
Mm-hmm.
In addition to being a great drummer, but he came up with things that were interesting, and not that Mickey Hart didn't. But I think Billy kind of was driving the truck there. But it's great. It's Hunter humor all the way through.
Yeah.
It's not
Yep.
be taken with a grain of salt. When he's
Mm-hmm.
talking about these things, they're not meant to be taken exactly literally, if at
Yeah.
all.
Yeah.
You know.
And like towards the end of the song, talking about the train,
Mm-hmm.
trouble with you is the trouble with me. We got two good eyes, but we still don't see. Come round the bend, it's the end. The fireman screams and the engine just gleams.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of combines that cautionary, fun twinkle, and so it's a great song, and it's not as lyrically it's not up on par with some of the other songs we've been talking about, but it fits in with the music and the spirit of the song, and really if you look at the lyrics, it's sort of suggesting I'd say it's more of a thumbs down than a thumbs up on cocaine.
Yeah, I think the cocaine reference was incidental, and you're right. It kind of people pointed to that, like especially because this got some radio play. This is also one of these Grateful Dead songs that is known. You play this for
Mm-hmm.
somebody that people ask me, well, what song would I know? And I usually say, well, Truckin'. And if they blank on Truckin', I'll go, well, Casey Jones, and they go, oh yeah, and then say, oh, the cocaine song. It's not a cocaine song. But
Exactly. Yeah. Nor is it necessary about anybody driving a train either.
Exactly.
As far as that goes. But yes. Still, again, to me, fits right into the groove. Although a different sounding song of the entire album, and a great way to end it up.
And so for me, so here's a song that really kind of sums up the Dead in many ways. It's a very characteristic song. It sounds like the Grateful Dead. It's kind of a great album closer. It found its way on the radio, and to this day is something that sort of people connect with the Grateful Dead. And on both Cumberland Blues and Black Peter were just very enduring compositions that the Grateful Dead continued to play until literally till the end of their career. And Easy Wind, it captures that, because in like 1970, 1971, I mean, when the band got down with one of those Pigpen jammy songs, Hard to Handle, Good Lovin', or this, it captures that. So, for you combine all those together, I think that gives side 2 the nod, at least for me. And Pete, why don't you have the last word on side 1?
okay, well, from Uncle John's band, the all-time Grateful Dead, one of the all-time Grateful Dead themes. And High Time, it's a bit of a bummer. It's a bit of a dirge. it's a good example of a Hunter Garcia as being a ballad writing team. Dire Wolf, an enduring classic for not a kind of an underground favorite, but certainly something that they did continue to play throughout their career to great effect. In fact, I think they played it 3 days. 3 days before Garcia, before the last show, they played it when the FBI was protecting Jerry's life at Deer Creek, and he just kind of said, "So, be that as may," and then of course, the last song being New Speedway Boogie, folkloric, very historic, very of the moment, summarizing the 60s movement into the 70s. So, with that combo of 4 pretty classic Dead tunes, I'd say side 1 would be the one you'd want to listen to.
Well, and we'll take that, and I hope that our listeners will really go listen to both and decide for themselves with the background here. It's 2 great sides of music, and great discussion today, guys, on the album and on both of the individual sides. So for everybody, again, in the comments about the podcast, there'll be links to where you can listen to this on Spotify. There'll be some playlists there, and hope you've enjoyed our head-to-head version of the sideshow with Workingman's Dead.
All right.
All right.
We will see both of you next time.
Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely.